Boom! The Divined One descended to the ground when he got near Lucas. Lucas had used his gravity ability and made the gravity affecting the Divined One 3 times more than normal. It wasn't enough to stop the Divined One. Using his 2 huge pincers, he swiped them at Lucas, hurling 2 pillars of twirling wind towards him. The 2 pillars of twirling wind were like tornadoes, ripping out the concrete and sucking in everything in the surroundings towards them. Some of the cult members got sucked into them, turning into small pieces of meat in an instant. The twirling wind sliced everything that got sucked in. "Watch out!" Lucas shouted, and he unleashed his lightning strikes at the 2 pillars of twirling wind. Riley and the others also unleashed whatever they could at the 2 pillars of twirling wind. However, it didn't do much. The 2 pillars of twirling wind continued on their way. Lucas then placed his hands onto the ground, and another ice wall rose in front of the one he had created earlier. Crack! The ice wall cracked into shards of ice when the 2 pillars of twirling wind came into contact with it. It was slowly sliced thin by the wind blades of the 2 pillars of twirling wind. But before the 2 pillars of twirling wind could continue their path, Lucas conjured another ice wall behind the others. Soldiers looked anxiously as the shards of ice shot into the air from the ice wall. They could already feel their skin being slit by faint wind blades when the 2 pillars of twirling wind got closer. They gave out a sigh of relief when they saw the 2 pillars of twirling wind slowly dissipating when they reached the 3rd ice wall. Soon, the winds died down and everything seemed to go into a standstill. That is, except for Lucas. He knew he had to stop the Divined One from unleashing more of these pillars of twirling wind at them. With this in mind, he lunged at the Divined One. Boom! His legs bent and he kicked hard onto the ground. Lucas leaped over the ice walls, and when he got to the ground, he lunged at the Divined One. The other huge demonic crabs tried to grab onto him with their pincers but couldn't. Bladder! Some of the pincers that got in his way were shattered into pieces when he smashed through them. "Help Lucas!" Riley shouted at the other teammates. It might be an issue for Lucas if the other huge demonic crabs encircled him from behind. Riley and the other teammates knew they had to distract them for Lucas. Climbing onto the top of the ice walls, Riley aimed at one of the huge demonic crabs. Wham! A lightning strike unleashed by Riley hit one of the huge demonic crabs. The lightning strike hit its thick and hard shell, barely making a crack in it. This, however, worked and got the attention of the other huge crabs. They turned and snapped their pincers at him. Rex lashed out his spiky rock whip, curled it around Riley's waist and pulled back hard. Boom! The wind blades from the snapping pincers of the huge demonic crabs hit the top of the ice walls, slicing shards of ice from them. Thud! Riley smashed into Rex, and they fell onto the ground. The huge demonic crabs started crawling towards the ice walls next. Meanwhile, when Lucas got near the Divined One, he unleashed his lightning strikes at the Divined One. The yellow glow appeared and engulfed the Divined One again. It deflected his lightning strikes away. Lucas expected this, and he waved down both of his hands immediately. A torrent of ice spikes shot down at the crab body of the Divined One. They pelted onto the hard shell of the huge demonic crab's body. With the 3 times gravity that was cast onto the Divined One, it made the velocity of the ice spikes even faster when they got near. Crack! Some of the ice spikes successfully cracked through the hard shell of the huge demonic crab and penetrated through its body. The huge demonic crab's body was then nailed onto the ground by the ice spikes. Using its pincers, the Divined One tried to snap Lucas's body into halves. But it couldn't. The pincers were grabbed by Lucas's shadows, one on each side. Snap! The least the Divined One could do was to snap the pincers and hurl a torrent of wind blades towards Lucas. Bladder! Lucas ignored the wind blades. They sliced onto Lucas's body but couldn't get through his skin and flesh. His SSS-level physique ability was now much stronger at Adept level of mastery. The small slits of wounds healed immediately as they appeared. Lucas then got in front of the Divined One with both of his hands clasped together. He raised his hands and hammered down onto the head of the huge demonic crab. Bladder! Huge chunks of the hard shell and flesh of the huge demonic crab were taken out and they splattered into the surroundings. The Divine One quickly took a deep breath. And when he blew out, bubbles shot out from the body of the huge demonic crab. Pop! The bubbles exploded, sending out wind blades at Lucas. Lucas lowered his body and crossed his arms in front of it, trying to keep a smaller profile. Slice! The wind blades shot at him and tried to slice Lucas into pieces. Thud! It was the same result, and these wind blades could only open small slits on Lucas's skin. Lucas kicked onto the ground and lunged at the Divine One who was fused into the back of the huge demonic crab. Boom! His right hook at the Divine One's head broke the air and gave out a loud boom. It hit the Divine One's cheek, taking out the flesh and portion of the bones from it. Arg! The Divine One shrieked from the pain. He tried to punch back at Lucas's head, but Lucas swung his arm and blocked it away. Crack! The fist of the Divine One cracked and fractured from the impact with Lucas's arm. But the Divine One didn't give up and he wrapped his arms around Lucas's body instead. A white glow appeared above in the air. The white glow grew larger. Within a few moments, its diameter was at least 30 feet wide. As the white glow shone onto Lucas, he lifted his head and took a quick glance at it. He wasn't sure if he would be able to survive the huge white glowing sphere. Lucas recalled the cult members having those containers with such a white glow, and the flames they unleashed were devastating. He tried to get the Divine One to release his grip on him. Thud! Using his elbow, he pounded the arms of the Divine One. But the Divine One gritted his teeth and didn't let go. Even as he could hear the loud cracking sound of the bones in his arms whenever Lucas's elbow landed on them. Lucas could feel the heat from the white flames when they started descending. He changed tactics and, with his shadow, started punching at the Divine One's head. Thud! The fists rained down upon the Divine One's head, cracking the skull, and the skin, scalp and flesh flew off from the head. It wasn't enough as the Divine One's green eyes suddenly gave out a bright glow. This gave the Divine One a new lease on life. A surge of energy came into his body and the Divine One's head started to heal. Bones that were fractured also started to heal. Lucas! Riley shouted in vain as he tried to get to him. The white glow was descending and was only mere inches away from Lucas. He tried to get to Lucas but couldn't. A wind blade came at him and sliced off part of his shoulder. Rex, Emma, and Haryanto were also in dire situations. Rex's mouth was smudged with blood and Emma could barely fight with many wounds on her body. Haryanto's armor was now only on his arms. Most of it had been sliced into pieces by the wind blades. Taking on so many high-tiered demonic beasts was too much for them. Be honored to perish under the powers of my master, the Divine One said and gave Lucas a smirk. Lucas wasn't about to give up. He stabbed his fingers into the Divine One's eyes and pulled them out. Arg! The Divine One twitched from the pain but nothing else happened. Whatever was channeling energy to the Divine One was still able to do it. Thoughts raced through Lucas's mind. There must be something he had missed. A thought came into his mind from his summon space. Sheba wasn't ready to fight yet, but it reminded Lucas of something. Sizzle. Lucas could feel the pain as his skin started to burn and bubble from the heat that was coming from the white flame. He didn't have much time left. Ding! Share strength with summon beast for 5 seconds? Y/N. It was one of the things he could do when he upgraded his summoner ability. Lucas thought yes silently to himself. Arg! He gave out a loud cry the next moment. Ha 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 ha! Fool! This is what you get for going against my master. The Divine One started laughing out loud at Lucas, thinking that he was suffering from the pain. But it was not what happened. Lucas could feel a huge burst of energy coming into his body. Something that he had never felt before, even when he leveled up. He could feel that his body might explode if he didn't unleash the burst of energy. Flickers of light started engulfing his body. The temperature started dropping drastically. Lucas's shadow split and split until there were dozens of them. And his strength was now 10 times more than it was. This was Sheba's strength? Lucas thought. But it was no time to dwell on it, and he unleashed whatever he had. Using his hands, he ripped the head of the Divined One out. His body gave out lightning strikes one after another into the surroundings. Everywhere the lightning strikes touched caused an explosion, ripping out the concrete and asphalt. Only debris and smoke were left. His shadows started to rip the body of the huge demonic crab into pieces. As for the white glow that was coming down onto him, cold wind blew, and ice spikes rained upon it like torrential rain. The white glow started to become smaller as the ice spikes rained down. Boom! Finally, when it hit Lucas, a small explosion ensued. Lucas, with the powers from Sheba enhancing his SSS-level physique, barely suffered any damage from it. Plop! The body of the huge demonic crab, or what was left of it, dropped onto the ground. There were no traces of the Divined One to be found. His body was now ripped apart by Lucas and blown into smithereens from the lightning strikes. Everyone was in awe of what they had witnessed. They weren't sure anymore who was the beast. Lucas wasn't like anything they had seen before. "Try and get to Lucas," Riley shouted as he was worried about what would happen next. Unleashing such a burst of energy meant that Lucas might be tired out immediately. Rex nodded and decided to make a dash for it. He used whatever energy he had left, covered his body with rocks and charged towards the direction where Lucas was. A pincer came at his face, but Riley unleashed a lightning strike at it from behind. It bought enough time for Rex. He successfully broke through the crowd of men and huge demonic crabs. And as he got closer to Lucas, Rex saw him losing consciousness and falling onto his back. He took a leap and got to Lucas in time. Rex placed Lucas onto the ground and checked on him. Whirl! A loud whirling sound could be heard approaching where he was. Rex looked up and saw many planes coming towards the city. They slowly descended and opened up their backs. Men and women in mecha suits jumped out from the back and landed onto the ground. They were the reinforcements from the Center Battle Administration area. Other than the soldiers donning the mecha suits, there were also a few awakened teams that got out from the back of the planes. Plop! They landed near where Rex was. "So, you are the team from the South Battle Administration area?" One of them held his head high and said. The man with a head of golden cropped hair wore white impeccable armor, as if he was asking for attention from the demonic beasts. He waited for Rex to reply. "Terry, forget about him. Time to take care of those bastards," a sweet voice said. Terry's teammate standing beside him, carrying a huge claymore sword behind her small body, pointed to the huge demonic crabs up ahead of them. "Sure, Lynn." Terry gave a half shrug at his teammate and nodded. Boom! They leaped towards the huge demonic crabs from where they were, giving out a loud boom. Soldiers in mecha suits also followed closely behind. Rex carried Lucas behind his back and moved towards the direction where Margaret was. He had checked and Lucas's vitals seemed to be doing fine, but he wouldn't want to risk it. Following closely behind Terry and his awakened team, Rex figured he could sneak through the huge demonic crabs when they got into battle. Crack! Soldiers in their mecha suits fired kinetic projectiles at the huge demonic crabs. A loud cracking sound could be heard when the armor-piercing projectiles hit and penetrated through the hard shell of the huge demonic crabs. Terry held up his hands and blue flashes appeared from them. The blue flashes darted at the huge demonic crabs surrounding him and turned the color of the huge demonic crabs blue. And when it was done, his teammates took over. Lynn drew out the huge claymore sword behind her back, and the sword's blade started to have a red glow engulfing it. Blood that was splattered all over the surroundings started to get sucked in by the sword's blade. The blade turned red, and Lynn hacked downwards with both her hands. Slice. As the blade sliced downwards, it gave out a cloud of red poison. It looked something like Emma's ability. The slice went through the huge demonic crab's body like butter. Terry's other teammates were also able to crunch and destroy the huge demonic crab's hard shells easily. It was like Terry had turned their hard shells into soft shells with his ability. Terry and his team then went on to take care of the other huge demonic crabs. Rex saw an opening and took the opportunity to dash through it. "Lucas!" Riley shouted and stood in front of Rex and Lucas. Emma and Harrianto also came over. They waved over at Margaret, who was attending to Sherry. Sherry gestured for Margaret to have a look at Lucas first, as it wasn't a serious wound. Margaret nodded and quickly came over to have a look at Lucas. Using her ability, she hovered her hands over Lucas's body. A white glow appeared from her hands, and it darted into Lucas. Sweat streamed down her forehead as she tried to provide more energy to Lucas. Lucas felt his body void of energy for the first time ever since he had the slaughter system. He could feel warmth from Margaret's healing ability, providing him with what he needed to replenish his energy. Thoughts from Sheba also came into his mind. Lucas consoled Sheba as he only felt that he was exhausted and empty of energy. Beyond that, there was nothing wrong with him. "He is awake," Margaret said, and she tumbled to the ground. Lucas, who had just opened his eyes, quickly held on to her. She must have used up all her energy to revive him from his earlier state. He kept it in mind what had happened and took note to himself that he had better not use the ability to share Sheba's power easily. Sheba's god-level power was too much for him to bear at his current level. Lucas took out an energy bar and gave it to Margaret. It was the best he could do in the moment. Riley and the others were glad that Lucas was now conscious. They stood in a line before Lucas and Margaret on alert, in case the huge demonic crabs came at them. Fortunately, that didn't happen. The huge demonic crabs were taken out by the reinforcements from the Center Battle Administration area. The soldiers in their mecha suits proved to be a handful for the huge demonic crabs. They were able to shoot projectiles at them and move at a much higher speed than normal soldiers. And after the huge demonic crabs were distracted by the soldiers, the awakened teams moved in for the kill with their abilities. Lucas watched them closely. Other than Terry's team, there were a few awakened teams that were as powerful as Terry's team. They are the awakened teams from all 5 battle administration areas. You will join them to hunt for the apex demonic beast together soon, Sherry said. She had also joined in with Riley and the others, dragging the governor with the activation device along. Peter Lim was barely kept alive. His left hand was ripped off by a huge demonic crab. Sherry had no choice but to keep him alive. If not, she wouldn't be able to gather information about the Shadow Lotus. Boom! A loud explosion erupted, and after that, everything died down. All the huge demonic crabs were taken out, and everyone took a deep breath, looking at the carnage and destruction in front of them. The surviving soldiers of the checkpoint sat on the ground and panted as they tried to catch their breath. Out in the distance, the fighting was still going on. Explosions and cries of pain could be heard, but it decreased with the passing of time. The reinforcements from the Center Battle Administration area were turning the tide. "We did it! We won! Thank God for the leader!" The soldiers cheered and thanked the leader for his timely intervention. Lucas, however, thought otherwise. The Divine One was channeling someone or something. He figured it wasn't even human, and it was cunning and calculative. It had only tried to take over the city when the horde of undead caused chaos. And even when the demonic beasts appeared in the city, it had done so conservatively, not even trying to breach the wall. They were dealing with something different this time. "Now that everything is over, let me introduce myself." A voice boomed, and Lucas glanced over. "I'm Terry from the Center Battle Administration area. These are my teammates, Lynn, Damien, Carlo, and Mina." Terry stretched out his hand for a handshake. "Pleased to meet you. I'm Riley, leader of my team from the South Battle Administration area. And these are my teammates." Riley introduced the others, took Terry's hand and shook it. "I see that your friend Lucas is feeling better now. Next time you might want to give him a task he can take on safely." Terry glanced over at Lucas and said. Terry withdrew his hand and took out a handkerchief to wipe it. "Don't mind me, I have a bit of germophobia," he said with an apologetic look. Anger rose from within Rex. He pointed at Terry and shouted, "Who the hell do you think you are? Telling us what to do? And don't you know that Lucas was the one?" Riley pulled him back and stared at him. He wasn't too angered by what Terry had said. They weren't around to witness what had happened. And as for the bit about being germophobic, he glanced at Terry from top to bottom. Riley wasn't too sure, but he knew it could be true. If it wasn't so, who in their right mind would keep his armor impeccably clean and white? Lucas, who was behind, also thought the same. It's best for him if they thought of him as someone weak. That might give him a better chance if any of the Awakened teams were working for the Shadow Lotus. Other Awakened teams also gathered around Terry. One of them, with a team of tall and stern-looking men, introduced themselves. The team's leader, with a muscular bulk and a long beard, placed his huge arms across Terry's shoulders, making Terry very much displeased. "Quit standing around here. Let's talk over some beer," the muscular man with the long beard said heartily. "Kevin, get your hands off me." Terry shrugged away from Kevin's huge arms and used his handkerchief to wipe his shoulders. "Ho ho, silly me." Kevin slapped the back of his head and said, "Sorry, I've forgotten about your germo? What's it called again?" "Germophobia," Terry said. "Yeah, that. And come, meet my teammates. Kane, Bjorn, Eric and Astrid. We are from the North Battle Administration area." Kevin's teammates stood and flexed their muscles at Riley and the others. Rex looked down at his body and silently tried to compare his body build with theirs. Riley gave Kevin a smile and shook hands with him, and he nearly coughed his heart out when Kevin gave him a hard pat on his back after their handshake. Sherry stepped forward and said, "Kevin is right. This is not the place to talk. Let's get to the governor's office. I need to coordinate the recovery efforts from there. I'll brief all of you with the details of your mission to capture the apex demonic beast from there." Everyone nodded, and Lynn raised her hand and asked, "What about the Awakened team from the East Battle Administration area?" "Here. We are here." A voice came out of nowhere. Lucas glanced around and saw bloodied footsteps coming towards them. A few men and women then seemed to materialize out of thin air. "Stop scaring us with your invisibility ability," Kevin said. "Sorry about that." The leader of the team, a man with black hair and black eyes, dressed in a gray robe, shrugged and said, "I'm Lin Fan, and here are my teammates. Thiva, Dan San, Mike and Ross." Lin Fan introduced his team members to Riley, and Riley also did the same. Lucas took note of Lin Fan's ability. It might prove to be a handful for him. Maybe Sheba would be able to sense him out with his ability, he thought. He was trying to figure out the abilities of the other Awakened teams so that they could work better together and also keep a lookout just in case the leader was right. They got on armored cars and trucks to make their way to the governor's office. Along the way, the soldiers were clearing up the debris and trying to restore order to the city. Lucas sighed when he saw the number of dead bodies that were all over the city. This time, even though he was able to stop the Shadow Lotus from getting to the First Awakened and prevent demonic beasts from rampaging through the city, it was not without a price. When they arrived at the governor's office, Sherry with the governor was able to gain access and started coordinating the recovery effort. Planes started to arrive with supplies. Soldiers then handed out essentials to the surviving citizens of the West Battle Administration area. The City of Entertainment was now a thing of the past for them. What had happened had now shocked them to the core, giving them a stark reminder of how cruel this world with demonic beasts was. Sherry arranged for Lucas and the others to stay in the most luxurious hotel to rest first before the next mission. It was a welcome change for Lucas and the others. They had gone from being fugitives to fighting for the survival of the West Battle Administration area within such a short span of time. For the first night, Lucas took a hot shower and fell asleep within minutes when he lay on the bed. It felt like ages since he had had such a peaceful rest. The next day, Lucas woke up early and went down to the cafeteria for his breakfast. The smell of hot coffee and the spread of food made him feel that the hordes of undead and huge demonic crabs hadn't happened. Smudges of blood that couldn't be completely cleaned up in the surroundings were the only thing that reminded him of it. After he got his food, Riley waved at him to join the others at their table. "And I thought I was early," Lucas said and sat down. It reminded him of their days back at home. Someone was afraid the food would be gone, so? Emma said and glanced over at Rex. Rex swallowed the egg he had in his mouth and protested. It's paid for by Sherry. Why would you want to miss it? Riley took a sip of his coffee and frowned. It was too bitter. Seems like we've gotten a bad deal again, he sighed. Lucas nodded. So much work for $1 million. Patterns seemed to have emerged. He took a sip of the coffee and thought about the $10 million that was promised to him. Ho ho, you guys are early. A familiar voice boomed. Sounds of boots stomping onto the ground could be heard approaching. Lucas looked towards the entrance, and it was Kevin with all the other awakened teams. They nodded at Lucas and his teammates as they streamed into the cafeteria to get their food. Lucas, with his cup of coffee in his hand, silently observed them from his seat, trying to see if any of them were behaving strangely. The other awakened teams chattered among themselves and picked up their breakfast. None seemed to be suspicious. After the other awakened teams had gotten their breakfast, they sat down in the cafeteria. Every one of them ate and talked among their own teams, while side-eyeing the others on and off to try to get a grasp of how good the others were. Kevin even walked around chatting with the other awakened teams. Terry was focused on wiping his utensils with the help of Lin. And to the right of Lucas, Lin Fan sat and ate quietly with Lin Fan's teammates. How are you doing today? Kevin walked over with a huge smile. Thanks. Feeling much better now. Lucas replied. Kevin nodded, pulled a chair and sat down next to Lucas. He placed his coffee mug onto the table and said, I don't know much about your team, but I think having a common goal is all that matters. If you trust me, I think it would be great for us to work together. Kevin then patted hard onto Lucas's back. What the? He was surprised at how tough Lucas's back was. Kevin pulled back his hand and glanced at his palm. It was reddened from the impact. He glanced over at Lucas next. Lucas was much stronger than he seemed, Kevin thought. His eyes narrowed and he was glad that he had approached Lucas and his teammates. Maybe this time, I can outperform Terry on this mission. He mumbled silently to himself. In past missions where Kevin competed with Terry's team, he had always lost. However, Lucas weren't too keen. He nodded at Kevin and kept quiet. Lucas then glanced over at Riley so that Riley could make a decision. Riley gave Kevin a smile and said, Thanks. We will definitely try and help when there's a need to complete the mission. It was the most diplomatic response Riley could give. Ho ho. Yes, that's what we should be doing. Kevin stood up from his chair and walked away. Before he left, he gave Lucas another glance. What was that? Rex munched on his sandwich and said, Nothing much. The usual. Everyone trying to get the rewards for themselves. Riley said and sighed. After doing this for so long, he had seen too much. It was every team and every man for himself when you went out there for a mission. Lucas nodded and glanced over at Kevin. Kevin seemed to be friendly and boisterous on the surface but was also capable, trying to guarantee a better chance of success for his team. Lucas figured Kevin might have said the same thing to Lin Fan and Terry. Come to the governor's office for the briefing after you are done with breakfast. Sherry's voice boomed in the speakers of the cafeteria and broke Lucas's thoughts. Lucas and the others finished their breakfast quickly, and they made their way to the governor's office. There were armored cars arranged by Sherry ready to pick them up outside the hotel. The journey to the governor's office wasn't too far away, and they arrived there shortly after an uneventful ride. Welcome back. Sherry greeted them in the lobby of the governor's office. In the lobby, there were 5 other awakened teams already there waiting. They were in other areas of the city the day before and hadn't met Lucas and the other 3 awakened teams. Laid in front of Sherry were folders with some documents inside. And besides the folders were weapons, ammunition, earbuds for communications and essentials for survival. Everyone, take a folder each, she said, and Lucas took one of the folders. He opened it and read the documents inside. First, it was a map that looked familiar to him. It was a map that led to the Jewel Lake. And the other documents after the map were about their target for the mission. The target of this mission is an apex-level demonic beast lurking in the Jewel Lake. We don't have much information other than accounts from those who encountered it. Supposedly, it's unlike other demonic beasts. It's much more intelligent and able to use its ability to seduce and lure Awakened to their death. Sherry briefed them as Lucas flipped through the documents in his hand. There were aerial shots of the apex demonic beast, which only showed a smudge of darkness within the chilling water of the Jewel Lake. Other than that, there were testimonials from Awakened teams who had encountered the apex demonic beast. Lucas frowned when he read the testimonials. There were voices telling me to. I nearly succumbed to it, thinking that it was my savior. My teammates snapped me out of it by shooting at my arm. God, it hurts. They confirmed what he had figured earlier. The Divine One was under the control of the apex demonic beast, channeling the powers of the apex demonic beast through him. He wasn't the only one concerned with the testimonials. Terry raised his hand and asked, Secretary Sherry, this apex demonic beast seems to be smart and does mind control. Any way for us to counter it? They were used to fighting demonic beasts that wielded physical powers. An apex-level demonic beast that used cognitive control wasn't something they had encountered before. Good question. Sherry replied and pointed at some devices that looked like grenades. These grenades have been infused with some powers from my cognitive dominion ability. They would help you stay conscious within their blast range of 60 feet for 10 minutes. I can't be everywhere at the same time, so use them sparingly. There were enough grenades for the Awakened team members to have 2 each. The Awakened team members quickly grabbed onto the cognitive dominion grenades and kept them securely while glancing at what the others were doing. It was a crucial item for them to deal with the apex-level demonic beast. Whoever had more would have a much higher chance of survival. Lucas took his share of the cognitive dominion grenades and put them into his dark matter vault armor. His dark matter vault armor was now tattered with many torn areas due to the battles earlier, making him look less impressive. But he didn't have the chance to trouble Haryanto to fix it for him. Haryanto wasn't like him, and Lucas knew that Haryanto required all the rest he could get. When you are ready, pack the weapons and essentials before we move out. Sherry shouted and the lobby was abuzz with activity. They moved out to the airfield where there were 2 airplanes waiting for them. The Awakened teams were separated into 2 groups, one consisting of Riley, Terry, Lin Fan and Kevin's team. The other group consisted of the other 5 teams. The first group would be deployed from the southern side of the Jewel Lake, while the other group would be moving in from the east side of the lake. After they boarded the planes, the airplanes took off immediately. Time was of the essence as Sherry wanted to hit the apex-level demonic beast when it least expected it. She figured it would think that they would be busy with the recovery and rebuilding instead of coming for its head. The airplane carrying Lucas and the others slowly descended, hovering 20 feet above the open clearing. The blue glow that was protecting the airplane from being detected disappeared and the back of the plane opened. Terry and his teammates were tasked to be the vanguard for the mission, and they went first. Plop. They landed without any hiccups and Terry glanced up at Kevin. Kevin wasn't too pleased. Come on, we mustn't miss out on anything. He waved at his teammates, and they leaped out of the back of the airplane next. Before Kevin got out, he turned back and gave Lucas a nod. The next moment, he disappeared from Lucas's sight after he leaped out of the airplane. Soon, there were only Lucas and his teammates with Lin Fan's team. Lin Fan stood up and waved at his teammates, not uttering a single word. His teammates obliged and followed him. It was then Lucas and his teammates' turn. This place is bringing back bad memories, Rex said when he glanced down below at the open clearing. It was where they had fought the undead demonic beasts. Well, at least we have help now, Emma said. Lucas nodded and said, maybe we should try and stay behind, going in for the kill at the right moment. Riley patted his back and said, Ah, I see you've learned well. Lucas shrugged and they leaped out of the back of the airplane. Plop. After they landed, Lucas got to the front and Riley moved to the back. Rex, Emma, Haryanto, and Margaret stood in a line in the middle. In front of Lucas, Terry's team was way ahead, with Kevin and Lin Fan's team slightly behind to the side of Terry's team. Slowly, they started to head towards Jewel Lake. Tremble. The earth shook expectedly for Lucas and his teammates. They glanced at each other and got ready. Terry and the other teams stopped to see what was happening. Hundreds of mounds rose from the snowy ground. "Watch out!" Lynn shouted when she saw wind apes climbing out of the mounds with their rotten hands. Terry with his ability blasted at the wind apes with his blue flashes. Lynn then slashed her huge claymore sword sideways at the wind apes, unleashing a wind blade at the apes. Bladder. The wind apes were easily sliced into halves with Terry's ability. It wasn't over as more of these undead wind apes appeared with fire deer, ice wolves, and water striders from the mounds. Even those wind apes sliced into halves continued to crawl towards Terry and Lynn. "Damien!" Lynn shouted at one of her teammates. Damien quickly got to her side. Lynn then sliced the arm of Damien with her huge claymore sword. Blood oozed out from the wound and Lynn activated her ability. The blood got sucked into the sword and a red glow engulfed the sword's blade. Lynn then slashed her sword at the undead demonic beasts coming at them. Boom! The sword gave out a flash of red wind blade. And when the red wind blade hit the undead demonic beasts exploded into pieces. Lynn was able to suck in the ability of Damien through his blood and wield it with her claymore sword. "Give them what you've got!" Kevin on the left side of Terry's team shouted as they also encountered the undead demonic beasts. His body was engulfed in a brown glow, and it hardened into a rock-like structure. Kevin placed his hands onto the ground through the snow and pulled the ground like a rug. The movement of the ground caused the undead demonic beasts to fall onto the ground. Kevin's teammates then raised their hands. Huge boulders appeared above in the air, and they started to rain down onto the undead demonic beasts, squashing them into smithereens. Lynn Fan on the other end, to the right of Terry's team, had turned invisible. The undead demonic beasts tried to hit them by unleashing wind blades, fireballs, and icicles in the surroundings, but couldn't. All they did was destroy the snowy lands. Crack. Some of the undead demonic beasts were hit by something unseen and they cracked into pieces like a piece of glass. And soon, the undead demonic beasts also suffered the same fate, being brought down into pieces. "Is everyone all right?" Sherry's voice could be heard in the earbuds they were wearing. She was in one of the airplanes, coordinating and ready to help when required. By now Terry, Kevin, and Lynn Fan's team were done with the undead demonic beasts that were attacking them. They quickly glanced back towards the direction where Riley's team was. Terry and Kevin were thinking that if Riley's team needed help, then it would be a great chance for them to pull Riley's team to their side. They frowned when they saw Lucas and the others standing amidst a pile of undead demonic beasts. It was not what they had expected. The scene where Riley's team would be battling hard and calling out for their help didn't happen. Lucas waved at them to signal to them that everything was all right. Terry gave out a sigh and replied to Sherry, "Threat eliminated. Everyone's safe. Well done. Proceed according to plan." Sherry replied. These low and middle-tiered demonic beasts were no match for Lucas. He stood on alert as a familiar sound erupted in his mind. Ding! Slaughter points plus 2,800. Current slaughter points 9,200/40,000. Host level 6. Current abilities 6. Splash. The victory was short-lived as there were demonic beasts that appeared from the surface of the Jewel Lake. Many of these demonic beasts, as big as tanks, emerged from the water. These demonic beasts looked like walruses but were much larger. They stood at twice a man's height with their long menacing tusks growing out from their mouths. Tremble. When they moved out of the lake and onto the land, every step they took made their bulky bodies slam onto the ground, causing it to tremble. Terry frowned when he saw the number of demonic walruses coming his way. There were about 1,000 of them. The shore of the lake was now filled with these demonic walruses, changing the color of the shoreline to dark brown instead of the snowy white. He took a quick glance at Kevin and Lynn Fan who were behind. They also had stern looks on them. Sherry in the airplane frowned when she saw what they were up against. She tapped her fingers on the dashboard in front of her anxiously. The leader had given her a backup plan if she thought that the awakened teams couldn't make it. Sherry didn't like it, but she knew that pragmatically, it might be her only option. She gave out a sigh and watched the line of demonic walruses advancing towards Terry and the rest. Lucas saw the number of demonic beasts, and he summoned the system's information panel in his head. He had enough slaughter points to upgrade his lightning ability. This was not the time to save up the slaughter points. After he thought about upgrading his lightning ability, more information appeared in his mind. Improvements in expert level of mastery, SSS level lightning. Half the time to accumulate lightning strike. Half the amount of energy used. Unleash a lightning prison from the air or ground. Use lightning in any form. Engulf body in lightning armor. Upgrade to expert level of mastery? Y/N. Lucas silently said yes in his mind. A surge of energy came into his body immediately, and knowledge about the usage of the new abilities came into his mind. Get ready, Terry shouted into his earbuds. The nearest demonic walruses were now 60 feet away from him. Lynn stood in front of Terry and slashed her claymore sword at the demonic walruses. Before the wind blade from her sword could reach the demonic walruses, the tusks of the walruses gave out a blue glow and shot out huge ice spikes at the wind blade. Boom! The wind blade collided with the ice spikes and gave out an explosion. But some of the ice spikes continued on their trajectory and shot at Lynn and Terry. Terry pulled Lynn to his back and used his ability at the ice spikes. Blue flashes of light from his hands latched onto the ice spikes, turning them blue. And when these ice spikes hit onto Terry, they were soft and bounced off him like pillows. Damien, who was behind them, then used his ability and hurled balls of an amber glow at the demonic walruses. When the amber glow got near, the demonic walruses opened their mouths and blew out a blizzard of cold mist into the air. The cold mist then solidified into a thick ice wall, protecting them from the amber glow. Crack. When the amber glow of Damien exploded, it didn't cause much damage to the thick ice wall. Only small shards of ice were blown off. Tremble. The ground shook again when the demonic walruses charged at the ice wall, trying to get to Terry and his teammates. Crack. Their huge bulk broke through the ice wall, and the shards of ice shot out in the direction of Terry. Carlo and Mina, the other two teammates of Terry, leaped to the front, and they stretched out their hands. Their bodies turned into a metallic form, and they started to swell up into huge balls. Boing! The shards of ice bounced off their metallic bodies. Their master level of mastery had allowed them to change the nature of their metallic ability. It was, however, not over yet, as the demonic walruses kept charging at them. They used their sharp and long tusks to try and plunge into the metallic bodies of Carlo and Mina. The long tusks entangled with the metallic bodies initially, but when a blue glow appeared from the tusks of the demonic walruses, it gave out a chill that froze the bodies of Carlo and Mina. Arg! Carlo and Mina gave out cries of pain. Their bodies rapidly deflated and they turned back to their normal human forms. Terry, who was behind, raised his hands and flashes of blue light darted towards the demonic walruses. A dozen of the demonic walruses were turned blue. Carlo and Mina then conjured up steel spikes and hurled them at the demonic walruses. Bladder. The steel spikes ruptured through the now soft bodies of the demonic walruses, splattering the bodies into pieces. Even though Carlo and Mina were saved this time, Damien wasn't in a good spot. Some of the demonic walruses had encircled him, isolating him from his teammates. Terry frowned and raised his arm. "Lynn, do it!" he shouted at Lynn. Lynn quickly used her sword and slit a wound on his forearm. Blood flowed out from the wound. Terry had to grit his teeth and stop his urge to wipe the blood clean. A red glow engulfed Lynn's sword and the blood was sucked into the blade of her sword. She quickly slashed her sword at the demonic walruses that had trapped Damien. Whoosh! The wind blade shot out with a blue flash. When it hit onto the bodies of the demonic walruses, it turned their bodies into a blue tint. Damien hurled out balls of amber glow at those demonic walruses that had turned blue. Bladder. His balls of amber glow hit onto them, and they splattered into pieces. Damien saw the opening and without hesitation, he leaped through it and got out of the mass of demonic walruses. "Try and stay together," Terry shouted. His team members did so as they knew it was a dire situation now. They knew that Terry wouldn't use his blood for Lin's ability until necessary. Arg! A loud cry of pain erupted behind them. Thiva, one of Lin Fan's teammates, was nailed to the ground under the tusk of a demonic walrus. Blood pooled rapidly under his body, dyeing the white snow into a dark crimson red. Thiva raised his hands and aimed at the head of the demonic walrus, trying to use his ability to get away. Flames appeared in his hands, and they extended out like a rope, entangling the body of the demonic walrus. The fire rope slithered up towards the head of the demonic walrus, leaving a trail of charred burnt skin. The skin of the demonic walrus was tough, and the fire rope couldn't burn through much of the skin. When the fire rope got to the head of the demonic walrus, it darted at the eyes of the demonic walrus. Arg! Pain could be felt in the body of Thiva as the demonic walrus thrashed around, bringing him with it. The demonic walrus's eye was destroyed by the fire rope, and it made it go berserk. Dan San, another teammate of Lin Fan, used her ability and a white glow engulfed the demonic walrus. Lin Fan then came at it with his fingers that were engulfed in a blue glow. Clank! His fingers sliced through the body of the demonic walrus, and the demonic walrus shattered into pieces like a piece of glass the next moment. Lin Fan assessed the situation, and he knew that things weren't going too well. He glanced to his back at Mike and Ross, and shouted at them, "Do your job! Use it now or never." Mike and Ross glanced at each other for a brief moment and nodded. Mike, who looked like a DJ with flashy armor and headset, put his headset on. He then raised his hands and started to swipe them in the air, as if he was scratching a record. Sounds emitted from Mike into the surroundings. Those demonic walruses nearby stopped moving and their eyes turned into a red glow. They started to move and formed a circle with Lin Fan and his teammates within. Demonic walruses not under the control of Mike charged at those walruses, protecting Lin Fan and the rest. Their huge bodies slammed into each other. Blue glow engulfed the tusks of the demonic walruses on both sides, and they shot out ice spikes at each other. Bladder. It was a direct exchange of blows. The demonic walruses didn't dodge and took on the ice spikes. Blood splattered onto Lin Fan's face when some of the ice spikes penetrated through the bodies of the demonic walruses. Ross then quickly used his ability, and a white glow engulfed the area where they were standing. The white glow started to heal the wounds of the demonic walruses controlled by Mike. Lin Fan then held onto the hands of Dan San, and both disappeared into thin air. Shatter. One after another, the demonic walruses coming at them shattered into pieces. The demonic walruses then backed off and stood in a line together. They gave out a roar, and the air above Lin Fan and his team members also started roaring. Huge ice spikes rained down from the air like a blizzard. The torrent of ice spikes pounded down at them non-stop as the blizzard kept going. The demonic walruses under the control of Mike were quickly squashed into pulps of mangled flesh by the ice spikes. It wasn't any better for Lin Fan and his team members. The only thing he could do was pull them into his realm with his ability, hiding away from the ice spikes as they rained down from above. All of them frowned as they knew they couldn't hide in Lin Fan's realm forever. Lin Fan's energy would be used up eventually, and they would have to face the hordes of demonic walruses. Astrid! Kevin shouted as he saw a demonic walrus lunge at Astrid. Astrid tried to stop it with her ability. Thick vines rose from the ground, trying to hold the demonic walrus back. Snap! However, it wasn't strong enough. The demonic walrus kept its momentum with its bulky body and snapped the vines into pieces. Astrid tried to roll to the side but couldn't. The body of the demonic walrus crushed onto her leg. "Damn you!" Astrid shouted and drew out her pistol. Bang! Within a few seconds, she emptied the magazine of bullets at the demonic walrus. But it didn't do much. The bullets were only able to lodge bits of the skin off the demonic walrus. Bjorn and Eric, who were now covered in spiky rocks, charged at the front of the demonic walrus. The spikes on their bodies plunged into the flesh of the demonic walrus. This caused the demonic walrus to flinch and swipe its tusk at Bjorn and Eric. Thud! The tusk swiped them off its body and they tumbled across the ground. With Bjorn and Eric busy saving Astrid, Kevin and Kane were faced with more demonic walruses. Tremble. Kevin and Kane could feel the ground shake as the demonic walruses charged at them. Kane raised his hands and after a few moments waved his hands down. Huge boulders then pounded onto some demonic walruses from the air. Crush. Some of the demonic walruses were crushed by the huge boulders. But that didn't stop the other demonic walruses coming from behind. They trampled across the bodies of the demonic walruses hit by the boulders, crushing the bodies into a mangled mass of flesh and blood. Kevin placed his hands onto the ground and grabbed onto it like a carpet. With a yank, he pulled the ground to the side. The sudden jerk caused some of the demonic walruses to fall on their sides. But it wasn't enough. Kevin felt a chill on his back, and he looked up. Hundreds of ice spikes were forming in the air, and he knew he had better get away. Split up, Kevin shouted. His team members quickly leaped away from where they were. Thud. As the ice spikes rained down, Kevin gave out a roar, turning his body into rock armor. He swung his arms at the ice spikes coming at him. As the ice spikes cracked into pieces, Kevin felt dire and desperate. It was the first time he had to deal with so many high-tiered demonic beasts. Terry and Lin Fan were also feeling the same thing. Is it over for us? They thought as they struggled to fend off the demonic walruses. Terry, Kevin, and Lin Fan took a quick glance to see how Riley and his team were doing. If their team with members who all had SSS-level abilities were in such difficult situations, they couldn't imagine how Riley and his team would suffer under these demonic walruses. But all they saw were glaring bright flashes, temporarily blinding those who looked at them. They had to quickly look away to retain their sight. Stand back. Moments ago, Lucas had asked Riley and the others to stand behind him. He raised his hands up next and flashes of lightning started flashing in the air within a 60-foot radius from him. Hairs on everyone's skin stood up as the lightning intensified. The flashes from the lightning soon became so bright that Riley and the others had to narrow their eyes and shield their eyes with their hands. The demonic walruses in the surroundings were also affected. Some of them thrashed around vigorously. The blinding light had caused them to be blinded, making them anxious and violent. Even when blinded, they could feel the change in the air. The electrifying of the surroundings made their skin have a tingling sensation. To protect themselves from what was coming, they quickly blew out a white mist of cold air. The white mist covered the area around them. It turned slowly into ice crystals and then into a thick ice wall. Finally, Lucas had accumulated enough lightning strikes for his lightning prison. He waved his hands down and pillars of lightning strikes rained down from the air. The lightning strikes didn't go away and more of them appeared horizontally across the air, forming a huge cage made of the lightning strikes. The cage made of lightning strikes then slowly reduced its radius. Splatter. Those demonic walruses at the edge of the cage made of lightning splattered into pieces when the pillars of lightning strikes touched them. Even the ice walls weren't enough to protect the demonic walruses. The other demonic walruses who were behind started to jostle among themselves, trying to get away from the pillars of lightning strikes. Tremble. The ground shook as a result of their panic. But it was to no avail. As the pillars of the cage closed in, the demonic walruses succumbed to it. They tried unleashing ice spikes at the pillars of lightning with no results. The pillars of lightning were as strong as before. Blood and flesh were strewn in the air as more of these demonic walruses were destroyed by the pillars of lightning. And when the cage made of lightning had become a pillar of lightning strike when it couldn't reduce its radius anymore, a huge explosion ensued, giving out flashes of lightning strikes in the surroundings. Lucas! Riley shouted out to Lucas when the explosion ended. Unleashing such a powerful move must have taken out much of Lucas's energy, he thought. His worry was unwarranted. Lucas was still standing tall and getting ready for his next strike. A familiar sound erupted in his mind. Ding! Slaughter points plus 35,000. Current slaughter points 37,000/40,000. Host level 6. Current abilities 6. A surge of energy came into his body, making him feel as energetic as before. Riley and the others couldn't believe what they had just witnessed. Lucas had just eliminated 50 demonic walruses with his lightning prison. Terry, Kevin, and Lin Fan were feeling the same when the blinding flashes of lightning strikes were over. Terry felt he had missed out on getting Lucas on his side, while Kevin had had a hunch, but he had still underestimated how powerful Lucas was. Their team members were also perturbed by what they saw. It took so much effort for them to eliminate a single demonic walrus, and yet, Lucas could wipe out so many with just one move. Maybe we can win this. Yes, we mustn't give up. You bastards! The team members from Terry, Kevin, and Lin Fan's teams saw a sliver of chance if Lucas were able to help them out. This boosted their morale, and they wielded their abilities at the demonic walruses coming at them. Terry, Kevin, and Lin Fan were more reserved. They figured Lucas must have used up most of his energy for the lightning prison. Their hearts were in their mouths when they saw Lucas raising his hands again. He still had energy for the same move again, they thought with astonishment. But they were soon proven wrong when the bright flashing of lightning appeared again. Lucas, with his hands raised, was preparing to unleash another lightning prison at the remaining demonic walruses. Tremble! The demonic walruses, however, didn't stay and wait to be decimated. They turned around and tried to get away from Lucas. Lucas waved his hands down when he had accumulated enough lightning strikes. The familiar pillars of lightning strikes descended from the sky again, striking fear deep into the hearts of the demonic walruses even before the cage was formed. The end result was the same for those trapped within the lightning prison. As the cage made of lightning tightened and reduced its radius, the demonic walruses hit by the lightning pillars splattered into pieces, leaving a trail of blood and flesh in their wake. Even those demonic walruses that were dealing with Terry, Kevin, and Lin Fan also wavered. Sherry leaned forward when she saw what had happened. All was not lost, she thought. The 5 awakened teams attacking from the east side of Jewel Lake weren't doing well. They were now down to 3. Her only hope now rested on those attacking from the south. Riley's team advance ahead, Terry's team fall back. Sherry gave out her orders. Terry frowned when he heard Sherry's order, but he wasn't someone to go against reality. Riley's team with Lucas was much more capable of taking the vanguard position. Fall back, Terry shouted to his team members. Lucas and his team members then started to advance to the front, getting close to the shoreline. As he advanced, some of the demonic walruses came at him with their menacing long tusks. When they got near, their tusks glowed with a blue glow. Thud! Ice spikes rained down on him. Lucas gave out a roar and his body was then covered in lightning armor. The lightning also extended out from his hands, forming a shield and sword made of lightning. Thud! He raised the shield over his head, blocking the ice spikes coming at him with it. When the ice spikes hit the lightning shield, the ice spikes shattered into small shards of ice. And using the lightning sword, Lucas slashed it at the demonic walrus nearest to him. Plop! The lightning sword first sliced the tusk into pieces, and it went on to char and burn through the skin and flesh of the demonic walrus. Finally, the lightning sword sliced through the body of the demonic walrus, causing it to flinch and twitch until it lay motionless on the ground. When other demonic walruses tried to lunge at Lucas, they were stopped and slammed into the ground by his shadows. Lucas then unleashed a blizzard of ice spikes at the demonic walruses. The rapid moves that Lucas made gave the demonic walruses no chance to conjure their ice walls for protection. Bladder. Blood pooled under the bodies of the demonic walruses. The ice spikes had plunged into the bodies of the demonic walruses, nailing them to the spot. The remaining demonic walruses gave up after this and they scurried out of the way of Lucas. This opened a path for him to advance to the front with ease. Kevin and Lin Fan's teams had a surge of newfound energy after what had happened. They started to be able to fend off the demonic walruses coming at them. Terry's team stood at the back and gave support to the other teams when required. Things were indeed looking to have turned for them. Tremble! The ground shook when all the remaining demonic walruses turned around and made their way to the shoreline. And when they got to the water, they submerged back into the dark and still water of Jewel Lake. There was a moment of respite. Lucas took the opportunity and looked at the system's information panel again. Ding! Slaughter points plus 35,000. Current slaughter points 72,000/40,000. Host level 6. Current abilities 6. SSS level physique adept 0/9000. SSS level shadow wielder adept 0/9000. SSS level summoner adept 0/9000. SSS level ice ability adept 0/9000. SSS level lightning ability expert 0/18,000. SSS level gravity ability adept 0/9000. Level up Y/N. He had enough slaughter points for him to level up and upgrade some of his abilities. Lucas thought yes silently to himself. Lucas felt that familiar feeling of his energy getting stronger the next moment. When it was over, he felt that he was twice as powerful as before. His energy was also twice as abundant as before. Ding! Current slaughter points 32,000/80,000. Congratulations on leveling up. Host level 7. Please select new ability. 1. SS level earth ability. 2. S level water ability. 3. SS level wind ability. 4. SSS level ether realm ability. Lucas didn't hesitate and thought about the SSS level ether realm ability. More information about the ability appeared. SSS level ether realm allows host to enter an alternate realm. Within the realm, host would be invisible to others and impervious to most attacks. Ether realm at a depth level of mastery allows for host to stay within for 10 seconds. Add this as new ability? Y/N. Lucas thought yes silently to himself. He felt another gust of energy entering his body at the very next moment. Imagery and knowledge about using the ether realm ability entered his mind. Now that he was done with the new ability, he thought about upgrading his other abilities. He thought about upgrading his physique, ice and gravity abilities. For his attacks, his lightning ability proved to be more than menacing. His ice ability would provide protection if he upgraded it. And if he upgraded his physique ability, he would gain more power and healing, which would ensure his survival. As for the gravity ability, it had proved to be more than useful in catching enemies off guard. Information about the ability's upgrade appeared in his mind. Improvements in expert level of mastery, SSS level physique. Enhanced healing, able to regrow half of host's body. Improvements in expert level of mastery, SSS level ice. Half the time to conjure ice. Twice the thickness and strength for the ice. Unleash Sub-Zero Blizzard. Unleash Ice Palace. Improvements in expert level of mastery, SSS gravity ability. Allows host to increase/decrease gravity by 6 times within a radius of 180 feet. Effect lasts for 60 seconds. Allow host to apply gravity to 3 people. Effect lasts for 60 seconds. Energy usage of ability halved. Upgrade abilities? Y/N. He thought yes silently in his mind. The next moment, a surge of knowledge on the new abilities came into his mind. After he was done, Lucas felt more than capable of what was about to come at him. His teammates who weren't aware were still basking in his ability to unleash the lightning prison. They felt that the reward of $5 million each was close. Terry, Kevin, and Lin Fan, on the other hand, had their own ideas. They knew the success of this mission rested on Lucas's shoulders, and whoever could stay with Lucas would be able to get the reward. Ideas started to go through their minds. Splash. The dark and chill waters of Jewel Lake splashed again. Lucas focused on the shoreline in front of him. Flickers of light flashed as he got ready. However, this time, there were no demonic beasts that emerged from the waters. The waters had parted in half and a path appeared, as if the apex demonic beast was inviting them to enter. And on the east side of Jewel Lake, the same thing was happening. Lucas turned and glanced back at the airplane hovering in the air. Sherry tapped her fingers. She didn't expect the apex demonic beast to put her in such a situation. There were 3 options for her. One was to retreat. Another was to send in some of the awakened teams first. They could then have backup to rescue them when required. And lastly, she could send in a team made up of the strongest from each awakened team, with the others standing by to rescue them and vice versa. Sherry pondered for a moment. Finally, the leader's words helped her to decide. Life was all about pragmatic choices. Sherry took a deep breath, blew out slowly, and after she steadied herself, she spoke into her earbuds. The awakened teams on the east of the lake move and meet up with the other awakened teams on the south of the lake. As for the awakened teams on the south of the lake, choose the strongest among you to enter the lake. The rest of the team members stand by and get ready to rescue the others when necessary. After she gave her instructions, she glanced over at the pilot. The pilot nodded and pressed a button on the control panel. The airplane descended, and the back of the airplane opened. When Sherry was done putting on her armor and arms, she stepped onto the platform on the back of the airplane and leaped from it. Her decision was to concentrate the forces and use the awakened teams from the east as the vanguard. Their performance earlier wasn't great, and she had to cold-heartedly make them the sacrificial forces to see what the apex demonic beast was up to. And with the best from the other awakened teams like Lucas, Terry, Kevin, and Lin Fan behind them, someone like Lucas might be able to respond and adapt in time to save most of them. But with her making the decision, that doesn't mean that she would absolve herself from the battle. Sherry was willing to stake her life and suffer any consequences from it. The awakened teams who were assaulting from the east side of the Jewel Lake, however, didn't think much of it. They thought that Sherry was giving them an advantage to get to the apex demonic beast. It didn't take them too long to arrive at the south of the Jewel Lake where Lucas and the others were. Secretary Sherry? Wow, I'll be so honored. Heck, this might be better than the rewards. When they saw her on the ground getting ready to enter the Jewel Lake with them, they were surprised. They had never expected her to do so, as from their past experiences, the bureaucrats from the Center Battle Administration area never got their hands dirty. This made them give her more respect. Sherry gave them a nod, acknowledging their arrival. At that moment, she was standing beside Lucas. There was so much that she wanted to brief him about. "The leader has something else for me?" Lucas asked. Sherry shook her head, took a quick glance at the awakened teams from the east side, and glanced back at Lucas. She lowered her head slightly and said, "No, it's not something from the leader. I've seen how you fought and how much stronger you got within such a short period of time. All I ask is for you to finish the mission as soon as possible." Lucas saw what she did earlier and nodded his head. He wasn't aware of Sherry's background and why she was with the leader, but one thing for sure was that she wasn't comfortable making difficult decisions. Maybe the leader sent her this time for her to go through a trial like this, he thought. What went unsaid from Sherry was to keep casualties low. But she wasn't naive enough to spell it out. It had always been every man for himself out here. Lucas wasn't too concerned as long as it didn't affect his survival. He was more than happy to finish off the mission as soon as possible. And as for the number of casualties, he could try his best, provided it wouldn't diminish his chances of survival. He wasn't about to be some saint going around trying to save everyone, and in the process risking his own life. Splash. The water of the Jewel Lake splashed violently, as if the apex demonic beast was telling them that it didn't have patience left to wait any longer. Move out. Sherry knew they couldn't wait any longer, and she gave the order. The awakened teams started to advance toward the shoreline of the lake. Sherry stood behind the awakened teams from the east side of the Jewel Lake, and behind her were Lucas, Terry, Lin Fan, and Kevin, the best that were nominated from the remaining few other awakened teams. Their team members would stay near the shoreline and get ready to move in and rescue everyone. As they started moving, Lucas glanced back at Riley, Rex, Emma, Harrianto, and Margaret, giving them a nod, assuring them that he would be all right. He was, after all, a much different man than he was before coming here. The initial journey into the Jewel Lake using the path was slow. The cold mud at the bottom of the lake was soft and sticky, tiring out some of the awakened at the front. Lucas followed closely behind Sherry and the other awakened teams before him. He had used his gravity ability, making it relatively easy for them to walk on the soft and sticky cold mud. Terry, Lin Fan, and Kevin weren't doing as well. They had to use their energy to pull their legs out of the sticky mud over and over again many times. And even so, they barely kept up with Lucas. Terry, Lin Fan, and Kevin had wanted to approach Lucas to try and persuade Lucas to help them. But it seemed like it was impossible now. Lucas, who was 20 feet in front of them, was literally unreachable to them. "Halt!" Sherry suddenly shouted into her earbuds. They had reached a huge underground cave. A voice then came into everyone's mind. "Welcome to my lair." The voice boomed, and everyone except Sherry felt as if their heads wanted to explode. Lucas's eyes opened wide as he had heard this voice before. The Divined One, or to put it more accurately, the apex demonic beast that was channeling its thought through him. "Come in, so that we can negotiate." Negotiate? Lucas was surprised again by the apex demonic beast. He frowned as this meant that the demonic beasts were much more complex than what he had thought. Sherry thought the same, but they were too deep in it to back out now. She spoke into her earbuds and said, "Move in with caution." As they entered the underground cave, slowly descending into it, the surroundings slowly turned into pitch-black darkness. The wet, slimy walls of the cave with shells and organisms latched onto them faded out of sight, giving the awakened teams at the front a creepy sensation on their skin and insecurity. They took out their flashlights, and before they could turn on their flashlights, many dots of green glow appeared on the walls. It brightened up the area in an eerie green glow. And for Lucas, these green glows meant something else to him. They reminded him of the Divined One's eyes, giving out the same green glow that was all around him now. One of the awakened walked toward one of the green dots glowing. The green glowing dot was coming out from a tentacle from the shells, latched onto the cave wall, and had opened up with the tentacle sticking out. He wanted to touch the tentacle, but Lucas's voice boomed in his earbuds. Lucas spoke into his earbuds, trying to inform everyone of what he knew, and said, "Be careful. These green glowing dots look like the eyes of the Divined One." This made the awakened from the other teams quickly take a step back. Sherry then shouted into the air, "We are here. What do you want to negotiate?" Her voice echoed in the huge underground cave, reaching deeper into it as it reverberated. Silence. No reply came from the apex demonic beast, only silence after a few moments. "Get ready for battle," Sherry said, and everyone went on high alert. Thump. A thumping sound could then be heard coming toward Lucas and the rest. The awakened teams at the front pointed their hands and weapons in the direction of the thumping sound. "Stop!" The apex demonic beast's sound boomed in everyone's mind, making them shake their heads vigorously, trying to make it less painful. The thumping sound came from a dozen squid-like demonic beasts. They used their tentacles to walk, while their bodies gave out numerous flashes of glow in different colors. "They are coming. Let's make peace. Fight them. Together." The apex demonic beast's voice boomed in everyone's head again. "They are coming? Who are they?" Lucas was perturbed by what the apex demonic beast said. It was something he had never heard of. Was it telling a lie to try and negotiate with us? Lucas pondered. He glanced over and checked on Sherry to see if she had any idea. Sherry's expression told him that she was as clueless as he was. "Make peace? After what you've done? Impossible!" she shouted. The number of deaths these demonic beasts inflicted on the different battle administration areas was astronomical, sometimes even nearly wiping out a whole city. She wasn't about to talk peace with them. Her mission was clear from the leader, and that was to kill the apex demonic beast. The other awakened also felt the same. Anger raged within them. Most of them had the unfortunate experience of witnessing teammates, friends, or family members die at the hands of a demonic beast. The gall of this apex demonic beast to try and talk about peace. Lucas watched closely the environment from behind. Flashes of light appeared in his hands. Terry, Lin Fan, and Kevin also got on high alert when they saw Lucas preparing himself. The dots of green glow started to sway violently from left to right. The awakened teams knew something was up. "Stop looking at the green glow," someone shouted. One of them felt nausea and couldn't stop himself, puking his guts out. The other awakened also started to feel the same. Boom! They started to open fire and unleash their abilities at the green glowing dots. The green glowing dots went dark when they were hit by the bullets and all sorts of projectiles. After it got dark, the demonic squids started making their moves. The demonic squids shot out a wave of dark ink at the awakened teams. Some of the awakened nearest to the demonic squids got splashed onto by the dark ink, and they gave out loud cries of pain. Sizzle. Their skin burned and dissolved from the dark ink. Whoosh. Their teammates hurled out fireballs at the demonic squids. But the demonic squids gave out bright flashes of glow and absorbed the fireballs into their bodies. The bodies of the demonic squids which absorbed the fireballs turned into a tint of amber. Those awakened that hurled out the fireballs then felt something went away from their bodies. They swung their arms and tried to hurl out fireballs at the demonic squids again. To their surprise, they only hurled out thin air from their hands. They glanced at their hands and tried to conjure a fireball but realized they couldn't anymore. Their abilities had miraculously been taken away by these demonic squids. Sizzle. The demonic squids squirted out another wave of dark ink at the awakened, and it burned and started to dissolve these awakened. One of the awakened from behind hurled a sharp steel spike at one of the amber-tinted demonic squids. Bladder. The sharp steel spike plunged through the body of the demonic squid. After the demonic squid was splattered into pieces, an amber glow engulfed one of the awakened. "It's back!" the awakened shouted when he was able to conjure up a fireball again. Lucas saw this and shouted into his earbuds. They can only take one ability at a time. It was then a battle of numbers. The awakened teams at the front hurled different projectiles at a demonic squid. One of the projectiles was absorbed by the demonic squid, and the other successfully hit the body of the demonic squid. A few of the demonic squids dropped dead from the attacks. "Come on, you bastards!" This gave the awakened teams a boost of morale. They didn't stop and kept going, giving the demonic squids everything they had. Thump. Just as they were clearing up the last of the demonic squids, they heard loud thumps coming at them again. Their hearts sank as they heard the thumping sounds being 3 times more than earlier. "Watch out!" The demonic squids blasted out large swaths of dark ink towards the awakened teams. The awakened teams had no choice but to retreat. Some of the awakened got caught by the dark ink, had their legs burnt and dissolved. Their teammates weren't able to turn around and save those who were now crawling on the wet and slimy cave ground. "Help us!" they pleaded, but their teammates knew they would all perish together. Sizzle. The sound of flesh being burnt and dissolved could be heard as the awakened team members ran towards Lucas, Terry, Lin Fan, and Kevin. "Here's your chance to get hold of the reward. Yeah, they are all yours now. We think it's time for you to do your job." After they ran past Lucas and the others, they started asking Lucas and the others to take care of the demonic squids. Initially, these awakened teams thought they had an advantage over Lucas and the others, but reality had set in for them. The demonic squids were nothing like all the other demonic beasts they'd dealt with before. They had thought that Lucas and the others weren't as good as they were, and that's why Sherry let Lucas and the others be behind them. But after suffering heavy losses, with each team of 5 dwindling down to only 2 or less each, it was clear to them that it might be best for them to bail out. Terry glanced over at Lin Fan, who was standing beside him. His powers weren't useful without someone else to deal the final blow. He had tried to persuade Lin Fan to join forces with his team earlier. And to his relief, Lin Fan at this moment gave him a nod. As the demonic squids shot out another wave of dark ink at Terry, Lin Fan placed his hand on Terry's shoulder. Terry had to try his best not to squirm away from Lin Fan's touch. Splash. When the dark ink got near, Both Terry and Lin Fan disappeared into Lin Fan's realm. On the other side, Kevin was also worried. If he went at the demonic squids alone, his ability would be absorbed by one of the demonic squids. He glanced over at Lucas, hoping for Lucas to agree to work together like what Lin Fan did. To his horror, Lucas was focused at the front, with his hands held up. The demonic squids also hurled huge swaths of dark ink at Lucas and Kevin. It seemed like a dark wall had blanketed the underground cave, turning the dimly lit underground cave into darkness. The awakened teams behind Lucas cursed at their bad luck. What was this young man thinking? Using his ability would only result in his ability being absorbed by the demon squid, they thought when they saw Lucas unleashing his power. Pillars of lightning came down from above the demonic squids. The hair of the awakened team members stood on end, but the awakened teams shook their heads. These pillars of lightning will just be absorbed by the demonic squids. And they were right. The demonic squids' bodies glowed in different colors as the pillars of lightning struck down onto them from above. The awakened teams felt their hearts sink and they opened their mouths wanting to cry for help. White mist appeared as their hot breath met the cold air. The underground cave had turned colder than it was. And it didn't stop. They could feel the ice appearing everywhere in the underground cave. Even the huge swath of dark ink was now frozen into a solid piece of dark-colored ice. Lucas then raised both of his hands. Cold wind blew and ice spikes rained down upon the demonic squids. Bladder. The ice spikes raining down penetrated the bodies of the demonic squids. But that was not all. Ice spikes rose from the ground and they penetrated through the bodies of the demonic squids from below. The ice spikes from the ground didn't stop and they rose higher and higher, until they reached the ceiling of the underground cave. Soon, there were only splattered flesh from the bodies of the 30-odd demonic squids, all over the area. Lucas's first usage of his Ice Palace attack was successful. A familiar sound erupted in his mind. Ding! Slaughter points plus 25,200. Current slaughter points 30200/40,000. Host level 7. Current abilities 7. As Lucas felt the familiar surge of energy coming into his body, the awakened teams looked at him with their mouths still wide open. They glanced over at the ice spikes, looking like an ice palace. They couldn't believe what they'd just witnessed. How was it possible? How can anyone have more than one ability? The awakened teams finally realized they were wrong about Lucas, Terry, Lin Fan, and Kevin. Lucas and the others were Sherry's triumph card. And they were the... Before they could protest at Sherry's strategy, the voice of the apex demonic beast came into everyone's mind again. Why? We could fight them off. Together. The voice of the apex demonic beast sounded different this time. It sounded like it was utterly disappointed with how things went. Fight together? After what your demonic squids had just done. One of the awakened shouted with rage at the apex demonic beast. The other awakened also started cursing, venting their anger at it. The voice of the apex demonic beast in their mind turned silent. It was contemplating. And a few moments later, the apex demonic beast's voice boomed again. The elders were right. After it spoke, the underground cave started to shake vigorously. Lucas's ice spikes shattered into pieces and rocks from the ceiling of the cave rained down at the awakened teams. Take cover, Sherry shouted. The mission wasn't going too well for her, with most of the awakened perished. She was already in two minds about retreating and calling it off. Her thoughts made her distracted for a moment. Watch out! When he saw a rock coming down at Sherry, Lucas used his shadow and pulled Sherry to his side. The rock missed Sherry by mere inches and it landed onto the ground of the underground cave. Plop! When the rock landed onto the ground, it didn't break into smaller pieces but surprisingly bounced off the ground. The ground! Lucas tried to stomp on the ground, and he was astonished when his feet also bounced off the ground. It was now soft. A thought quickly went through Lucas's mind. This was no underground cave. It was a part of the apex demonic beast. Get out of this place, Lucas shouted. Lucas activated his gravity ability. making himself and Sherry have 3 times less gravity than what was normal. He held onto Sherry and hurled her out of the underground cave with his strength. Sherry shot out of the entrance like a bullet. Terry, Lin Fan and Kevin took some effort, but were able to leap out of the entrance. The awakened teams behind Lucas also tried to leap away, but the soft ground started rising. Lucas floated behind them and with his enormous strength, hurled them out of the entrance one by one. And when he was done, he used his gravity on the ground, making it have 6 times gravity than normal. Plop. The ground then went back down again. The next moment, Lucas flew towards the entrance as fast as he could, and he successfully got out of it. Boom! Just as he got out, a loud booming sound could be heard behind him. Lucas took a glance back and saw that the entrance to the underground cave had closed, and a huge mountain-looking figure rose from the ground. It was as tall as a 5-story building, and 2 huge green glowing eyes opened on its sides. Arg! Everyone felt their minds being invaded by something trying to take over. Lucas quickly took out the cognitive dominion grenade Sherry had handed out to them earlier. He twisted the safety pin, pulled it out and threw it onto the ground. A brown glow started to blast out from the grenade and surrounded Lucas. Lucas immediately felt the apex demonic beast's stranglehold on his mind go away. Quick! Do the same. The awakened teams saw what Lucas did and they followed suit. They took out their cognitive dominion grenades and threw them onto the ground. Soon, they were basked in a brown glow, free from the apex demonic beast's control for a brief moment. But it was not over. The lake water, which had been split apart to form a path, started to flow and fill the path. Run! The awakened teams shouted. Every one of them made a dash for land, which was 300 feet away. They ran as fast as they could. When they got out of the brown glow emitting from the cognitive dominion grenades, they took out the last grenades they had on them and threw them ahead. Clonk! Wherever the cognitive dominion grenade landed, it emitted a brown glow, providing cover for the awakened from the apex demonic beast's mind control. The water came closer as the path got narrower. Finally, when they got near enough, all of them took a huge leap at the shore of the lake. Sherry, Terry, Lin Fan and Kevin got onto the shoreline and turned back. They saw Lucas floating in the air, with a brown glow engulfing him. Lucas had held onto the grenade and used his gravity ability to get into the air. Roar! The apex demonic beast gave out a roar and a huge tentacle whipped at Lucas. Whoosh! A gust of wind blew past Lucas as he flew to the side and dodged away from the tentacle. Lucas raised his hands and waved them down next. Pillars of lightning strikes came down onto the left eye of the apex demonic beast. A green glow engulfed the body of the apex demonic beast. Thud! The pillars of lightning strikes struck onto the green glow but couldn't penetrate it. Lucas wanted to unleash another lightning prison at the apex demonic beast, but he felt a gust of wind coming at him from the side. It was the huge tentacle of the apex demonic beast again. Lucas had no choice but to dodge away from it. He flew backwards, trying to get closer to the shoreline. He figured that maybe the apex demonic beast would not be as powerful on land. Splash! The tentacle missed and the lake water splashed when the tentacle slammed into the water. Droplets of the chilling water then rained down upon Sherry and the others at the shoreline. Riley, Emma, Rex, Harrianto and Margaret watched anxiously at what was happening. The scene of Lucas in the air fighting the apex demonic beast reminded them of Athena when she did the same. But this time they weren't going to let Lucas fight alone. Even though they couldn't take on the apex demonic beast, they could at least help Lucas by giving him the cognitive dominion grenades they had. Terry, Lin Fan and Kevin, on the other hand, glanced at their teammates. They had other ideas of their own. Boom! The apex demonic beast moved to chase after Lucas, splashing the lake water and making the ground tremble. With the shaking of the ground, Sherry came to her senses. Airplanes give firing support. She shouted into her earbuds. The airplanes that were hovering in the air turned and aimed at the apex demonic beast. A trail of bright amber shot out from the airplanes and came at the apex demonic beast. Thud! The shots hit the green glow of the apex demonic beast but couldn't get through it. Lucas took the opportunity and unleashed his lightning prison at the apex demonic beast's eyes again. This time, when the pillars of lightning descended upon the green glow, he followed up with his ice palace. Huge pillars of ice spikes pounded onto the green glow of the apex demonic beast. Everyone looking upon what was happening had their hearts in their mouths. They gasped when they saw Lucas unleashing another lightning prison onto the apex demonic beast again. The awakened teams couldn't believe how much energy Lucas had. Most awakened would be exhausted by now, unleashing such powerful attacks for so many times. "Look!" One of them pointed at the apex demonic beast. The green glow shimmered for a moment. A thought came into their minds. Maybe Lucas could really defeat and kill the apex demonic beast. With this thought in mind, they clenched their fist anxiously as they saw Lucas held up his hands and huge pillars of ice spikes appeared in the air. Before the huge pillars of ice spikes could descend onto the apex demonic beast, the apex demonic beast used its tentacle and swiped at the ice spikes. Crack! The ice spikes cracked into pieces when the tentacle covered in the green glow slammed into the ice spikes. Shards of ice rained down onto the lake, creating splashes that were at least 30 feet high. The tentacle of the apex demonic beast, with its momentum, didn't stop and it brushed past the apex demonic beast's eye. Lucas took the opportunity and lunged at the apex demonic beast's eye with a spear made of lightning in his hand. When he got near, he pulled back his arms and with all his might, Lucas thrust the lightning spear at the apex demonic beast's eye. Thud! The spear hit the green glow, and it caused the green glow to shimmer again. Lucas pulled back his arm again, getting ready to thrust at the apex demonic beast's eye. A gust of wind came at him from his side. It was the apex demonic beast's tentacle swinging back at him. Lucas ignored it and thrust the lightning spear. The lightning spear hit the green glow and the green glow finally dissipated. And at the same time, the tentacle slammed into Lucas's body. Thud! Lucas was flung away from the apex demonic beast. Boom! He flew away like a bullet, landing on the ground 100 feet away. Lucas slid through the ground, leaving a trail of disturbed snow and soil until he stopped. "Lucas!" Riley and the other team members shouted and they ran towards him. But when they tried to do so, some members of the other awakened teams stood in front of them. These awakened had eyes that looked soulless and gave out a green glow. Whoosh! One of them unleashed a wind blade at Riley. Riley quickly conjured his lightning armor and unleashed a lightning strike at the man. The wind blade hit Riley's lightning armor but couldn't do much damage. The man wasn't as lucky. Riley's lightning strike blasted through his body, leaving a gaping hole in it. Sherry, who was nearby, quickly used her ability and tried to clear the minds of the few awakened. A brown glow emitted from her hands and darted into the heads of these awakened. "Watch out!" Riley shouted when he saw Terry, Lin Fan and Kevin holding their hands to their heads. They were most likely in a struggle with the apex demonic beast, wresting control of their minds from it. Their teammates like Lin, Kane, and Thiva quickly took out a cognitive dominion grenade and threw the grenade at the feet of Terry, Kevin, and Lin Fan. Brown glow emitted from the cognitive dominion grenade and the three of them, Terry, Kevin, and Lin Fan, felt better. They were then able to put down their hands as the throbbing headache they had went away. In the meantime, Lucas stood up from the small crater that he had created when he slammed into the ground. His ribcage was fractured by the apex demonic beast's attack, but it was already healing. The ribcage bones fused back together, and his internal organs stopped bleeding with the ruptured wounds also closing. Lucas activated his gravity ability and made his body have 6 times less gravity than normal. He leaped and floated in the air. Wasting no time, Lucas lunged at the apex demonic beast. Boom! When he got near, the tentacle from the apex demonic beast whipped at him again. The air boomed as the tentacle broke through the air. Lucas used his gravity ability and made the tentacle have 6 times more gravity. Boom! The tentacle that was coming at him slammed into the ground, kicking up the snow and wet soil underneath the snow. Roar! The apex demonic beast struggled to move its tentacle. Lucas was ready to unleash his lightning prison at the apex demonic beast when he saw it turn its eyes in the direction where Riley and the others were. This time it was Lynn, Kane, and Thiva who were affected. Lynn drew her claymore sword and slashed it at Emma. Rex conjured a rock wall that rose from the ground, but the wind blade from Lynn's claymore sword sliced through the rock wall. There was a difference between an SS and SSS level ability. Whoosh! Rex pulled Emma to the ground, and they dodged the wind blade in the nick of time. But they couldn't stop as they saw a shadow appearing on the ground. Emma looked up and saw that a huge boulder was coming down at them. Using his mechanical armor, extending it longer with a robotic arm, Haryanto tried to pull them away with it. But a whip made of flame swung down at the robotic arm. Thiva was wielding the flame whip at Haryanto. Wham! Riley with his lightning strike unleashed it at the huge boulder coming down. His lightning strike hit the huge boulder and broke it into a few pieces. Thud! It was, however, not enough to stop it. Emma and Rex gave out a cry in pain as a piece of the boulder crushed Emma's leg and Rex's arm. Damn! Riley cursed, but he remained calm-headed. He took out a cognitive dominion grenade, disarmed the safety pin, and hurled it at where Lynn, Kane, and Thiva were. The brown glow emitted from the cognitive dominion grenade and engulfed the three of them. Lynn, Kane, and Thiva then stopped moving. The green glow of their eyes slowly went away. What happened? When Lynn, Kane, and Thiva regained their consciousness, they looked at Emma and Rex, who were now being healed by Margaret. Everyone, get your grenades ready, Sherry said. She wasn't sure who the apex demonic beast would try to control again. So it's best to be prepared until Lucas can kill the apex demonic beast. The only thing was that they didn't have many cognitive dominion grenades left. She frowned and glanced over at where the apex demonic beast and Lucas were. The others looked at each other warily, afraid that one of them would suddenly be controlled by the apex demonic beast. Unknowingly, one of them was out of sight. Amidst the commotion, Lin Fan entered into his realm using his ability. The apex demonic beast gave out a roar when it saw that its ploy to try and distract Lucas didn't work out. Turned its focus back to Lucas. The eyes of the apex demonic beast glowed brightly as it tried to take control of Lucas's mind. Lucas took out his last cognitive dominion grenade, twisted the safety pin, and pulled it out. As the brown glow emitting from the grenade engulfed his body, the splitting headache that he felt was gone. Lucas clipped the grenade onto his dark matter vault armor, and he lunged at the apex demonic beast again. Huge pillars of ice spikes and lightning appeared above the head of the apex demonic beast. The apex demonic beast, with its tentacle nailed to the ground by Lucas's gravity ability, couldn't move away from the pillars of ice spikes and lightning strikes. Bladder. The ice spikes penetrated through the tough skin of the apex demonic beast, and the lightning strikes struck the wounds of the apex demonic beast caused by the ice spikes. Its flesh splattered out into the air. Relentlessly, Lucas raised his hands and waved them down again. Another lightning prison and ice palace struck the apex demonic beast's head. Roar! The pain caused it to thrash around and give out a huge roar in pain. Lucas then raised his hands again. He knew the next wave of attacks should be able to finish it off. But before he could do so, Lucas felt a gust of wind coming at him from behind. It was Lin Fan with his plasma claws coming at him. Lucas ignored the claws. He felt a warm sensation on his neck as Lin Fan tried to stab his plasma claws into it. Thud! The plasma claws were stopped by the tough skin of Lucas. Lucas waved his hands down and then twisted his body and gave an elbow to Lin Fan. But Lin Fan had fallen to the ground and his elbow missed. Lucas glanced at Lin Fan, who ran towards the apex demonic beast and disappeared into thin air. Lin Fan had used his ability to get into his realm. The apex demonic beast, after being struck again by Lucas's lightning prison and ice palace, could now only give out a soft murmur. You will regret. Its voice came into Lucas's mind. Bladder. Flesh splattered out from the apex demonic beast's body. Lin Fan was trying to get into it to harvest its demonic beast core. Seeing this, Lucas summoned Sheba out from his summon space. As Lin Fan used his plasma claws slowly digging his way into the body of the apex demonic beast's core, he saw an amber glow appearing right in front of him. He stopped and paused. Suddenly, a huge mouth with sharp fangs came at him. Lin Fan quickly activated his ability and got into his realm. Within his realm, he was untouchable by the abilities of others. He waited for Sheba to go past him. Bladder. Lin Fan was utterly surprised when Sheba took a huge chunk of his shoulder with its huge mouth. "How is this possible?" he shouted and gritted his teeth. Lin Fan quickly turned around and tried to run away from Sheba. But he couldn't. He saw Sheba's huge mouth coming at his head. Lin Fan raised his hands with his plasma claws trying to slice at Sheba's head. It didn't cause any damage to Sheba. The plasma claws couldn't penetrate the tough, scaly skin of Sheba. Lin Fan gasped and his eyes opened wide as the surroundings darkened, covered by the huge mouth of Sheba. Tui. Sheba spat out Lin Fan's head onto the ground and it glanced up at the apex demonic beast. The apex demonic beast was startled when it saw Sheba. Its eyes gave out a final burst of green glow and it gave out a soft whimper. Elder. Elder? Lucas heard what the apex demonic beast said but didn't know what it meant. He wanted to unleash another blow at it but stopped. A familiar sound erupted in his mind. Ding! Slaughter points plus 16,000. Current slaughter points 46200/40,000. Host level 7. Current abilities 7. Lucas. Shouts of his name disrupted his thoughts. Sherry and the others were coming towards him. They couldn't believe what they had just seen. An apex demonic beast being slaughtered by a person. It was unheard of even for Sherry. She always knew the First Awakened had the ability to do so but wasn't around to witness it when Athena took care of the apex demonic beast in the South Battle Administration area. Even Riley, Rex, Emma and Harrianto, who had witnessed Athena before, were also astonished with what Lucas did. They were the ones who saw Lucas starting out as a newbie to becoming stronger into what he was now. "You all right?" Riley came up to Lucas and asked. Lucas nodded and replied, "I'm fine." He reached into his dark matter vault armor and took out some energy bars. "Want some?" Lucas offered them to Riley and the others, as he had always done. Riley and the others took the energy bars and patted him on his back as they walked away. However, it was not over. The airplanes descended and soldiers got out of them. Some of them started to harvest the flesh, blood, and demonic beast core of the apex demonic beast. And some of them took care of Lin Fan's head and body. "I can try my best to see if there are any clues on the Shadow Lotus," Sherry said as the soldiers carried away Lin Fan's head and body in hibernation devices. Lin Fan's teammates didn't know what was going on, and they glanced at Sherry with a perturbed look. Sherry gave out a sigh and said to them, "Lin Fan was working with the Shadow Lotus. And so, I would need you to help me in the investigation." Sherry then glanced back over at Lucas and said, "Come with me back to the Center Battle Administration area together with your team." Lucas nodded immediately. After all, it was time for his rewards after all this hard work. Far away, in an abyss, huge demonic beasts stirred from their sleep. They felt another of their own had perished. Time was ticking for them. More airplanes came and descended upon Jewel Lake. The soldiers got out from the back of the planes and got to work swiftly. There were some that took care of the injured awakened team members. Some began to join the rest, getting busy cutting up the carcass of the apex demonic beast. One thing that was common among them was that they were all in high spirits as they worked. Defeating an apex demonic beast without a huge number of casualties was something they had never imagined possible. And now that there were awakened teams who could eliminate an apex demonic beast, the future was looking bright for mankind. "Come, let's go." After the demonic beast core, blood, and tissue of the apex demonic beast were secured, Sherry spoke to Lucas and the others before boarding one of the airplanes. Lucas and the other awakened teams followed closely behind her. They were more than eager to leave this cold, barren place and enjoy a warm, cozy bath. On the airplane, Terry and Kevin jostled with each other trying to sit near Lucas. But Haryanto and Rex quickly took up the seats beside Lucas. They figured that Lucas might want some peace and quiet. Terry sighed and shrugged his shoulders as he took a seat opposite Lucas on the other side of the airplane. But he wasn't about to give up so soon. Being from the Center Battle Administration area, he knew what would be coming for Lucas, now that he had proved to be able to take on an apex demonic beast by himself. And Terry wasn't going to miss out on that so easily. Ho ho, guess I'll have to sit over there. Kevin gave out a hearty laugh and slapped the back of his head. Lucas knew what they were up to, and he only gave them a nod. He wasn't in the mood to deal with them. There were many questions in his mind, and he needed answers. He had no one in mind that could answer his queries except for the leader. They arrived back at the West Battle Administration area, and the awakened teams were instructed to rest at the hotel first. Much to the delight of everyone, Lucas and his team members went back to their room for a good rest. After entering his room, Lucas couldn't wait to clean up, so he turned on the tap to prepare for a hot bath. The hot steam rising from the bathtub relaxed his body as it filled up the bathtub. When it was filled with warm water, Lucas dipped in. With his head laid back against the wall, he closed his eyes to savor the moment. Lucas summoned the system's information panel in his mind next. Ding! Current slaughter points, 46200/40,000. Host level, 7. Current abilities, 7. Level up to next level? Y/N. He thought yes silently to himself. A familiar sound erupted in his mind. Energy flowed into his body immediately. Lucas thought he could see some of the energy in the surroundings, in a glowing form, as he felt his strength increasing. His muscles twitched and his bones cracked and fused back together. He gritted his teeth as he endured the process. Soon, the energy coming into his body faded and his muscles and bones were back to normal. Sweat from his forehead dripped into the bathtub. Lucas could see every moment of the sweat dripping in slow motion. And when the droplet of sweat hit the bathtub water, he could see the surface of the water break. He could also hear every bit of sound that was emitted. Now he was twice as powerful, and his senses were heightened to the maximum. A familiar sound erupted in his mind again. Ding! Current slaughter points, 6,200/80,000. Congratulations on leveling up. Host level, 8. Please select new ability. 1. SS level flame ability. 2. SS level water ability. 3. S level healer ability. 4. SSS level Crimson Pact ability. When he thought about the SSS level Crimson Pact ability, another information panel popped up in his mind. SSS level Crimson Pact ability allows hosts to have the ability of other awakened through their blood. The usage of the ability through the Crimson Pact would last for 1 minute. Add this as new ability? Y/N. Lucas was intrigued as this reminded him of Lin's ability. He didn't hesitate and thought yes in his mind. A familiar gust of energy entered his body at the very next moment. Imagery and knowledge about using the Crimson Pact ability entered his mind. Lucas then got out of the bathtub. After he dried himself and got dressed, he went to the cafeteria of the hotel. Riley and the others were waiting for him for dinner. Speak of the devil. Here he is, Rex said when he saw Lucas enter the cafeteria. Lucas waved at them and sat down in an empty seat. Emma passed him a cup of coffee and said, "What do you want for dinner? It's on us." Riley, Rex, and Haryanto nodded at Lucas. They were grateful for Lucas's killing of the apex demonic beast, and it was only a small gesture of appreciation. "Well, it's been a long while since I had some steak," Lucas said. Emma proceeded to wave at the waiter and ordered some steak for Lucas. While they waited, they started chatting. Lucas briefed them on what had happened in the underground cave. This astonished them when they heard about what the apex demonic beast had said. Fight them together? Who are they? Riley frowned as he tried to think of all the different possibilities. Did the apex demonic beast mean other demonic beasts from the other battle administration areas? He finally gave up and shook his head after a few minutes of pondering. It was the same for Rex, Emma, and Haryanto. They drew a blank like Riley. Lucas took a sip of his coffee and let out a sigh. Looks like his initial assessment was right. The leader might be the only one to know. The steaks arrived shortly, and Lucas tucked in quickly. Riley and the others joined in with their dinner. After Lucas finished his steaks, he even remembered to order some more for Sheba. If not for Sheba, he might have had some difficulty getting rid of Lin Fan. Lucas bid them good night and left for his room after the steaks arrived. After he left, Riley, Emma, Rex, and Haryanto's expressions turned from jovial into a deep frown. "So, what should we do?" Rex asked. They looked at each other for a few moments. No one wanted to say anything. Even Riley didn't know what to decide this time. They had the same doubts earlier, but Lucas was now even further ahead of them. It would be an impossible task this time for them to keep up with him. And it was especially so for Emma, Rex, and Haryanto, who only had SS-level abilities. "I suggest we try our best. Get as many demonic beast cores as we can get and be at master level of mastery," Haryanto said. He was confident that Lucas would stay with them. But would it be enough? He could easily work for the leader now, Emma said as she turned her coffee mug aimlessly. Riley nodded and thought for a moment. "Haryanto, go and offer to help repair his armor. Ask him if he would be staying in the team. Let him know that if he didn't want to, we would be more than happy for him." This sounded like a plan, and the other team members nodded their heads. Lucas was supposed to stay with them temporarily until the Pack family was taken care of. Little did they expect him to improve so much and bring them along on missions they had previously never imagined. "Then wait for my good news." Haryanto was optimistic, and he stood up from his seat. Knock. Lucas heard someone knocking at the door, and he turned toward it and said, "Who's there?" "It's me," Haryanto replied. When he heard Haryanto's voice, Lucas patted Sheba's head and walked over to the door. "Figured you would need to repair your armor," Haryanto said after Lucas opened the door. Lucas looked down at his torn and tattered dark matter vault armor and said, "Definitely." After Lucas changed out of the dark matter vault armor and handed it over to Haryanto, Haryanto wasted no time and got to work. A white glow engulfed Haryanto's hands, and it darted into the dark matter vault armor. The mechanics and electronics on Haryanto's arms then started to travel along his arm and onto the dark matter vault armor. These parts then fused into the torn areas of the dark matter vault armor. Done. Haryanto wiped his forehead when he saw the last bit of torn areas close. He handed the dark matter vault armor back to Lucas and said, "What's your plan for the future? We will be happy for you if you decide to go for something better." Haryanto asked nonchalantly, trying to make it seem like it was nothing unusual. "Plan for the future?" Lucas frowned and asked. He shook his head, let out some laughter when he realized why Haryanto was asking. "Tell them my answer will always be the same," Lucas said, pointing to the insignia on the shoulder of the dark matter vault armor. He would rather have teammates who weren't as powerful but were loyal to each other than powerful teammates who would backstab you from behind like Lin Fan. "I knew it. I should have made a bet with them." Haryanto pumped his fist into the air and said. He got excited and dashed toward the door, eager to inform the rest of the good news. "See you tomorrow." Haryanto's voice echoed in the corridor as he got further away. Lucas shook his head and closed the door. Sheba tilted its head and looked at Lucas, unaware of what had happened. "Don't worry. Nothing is going to change." Lucas patted its head and pondered the last words of the apex demonic beast. Next day, Lucas woke up and they had a sumptuous breakfast before moving off to the airbase. Riley and the others behaved as if nothing had happened and they chatted as usual. Even when Terry and Kevin tried to join in and talk to Lucas, they weren't too worried this time. Lucas just wasn't enthusiastic about working together with Terry and Kevin. And when it was time, they left for the airbase. Arriving at the airbase, Sherry was already there, waiting for them. She had handed over the recovery of the West Battle Administration area to the new governor appointed by the leader. After being away for so long, she was also eager to go back to the leader's residence. Commanding and making difficult decisions had made her respect the leader more. She used to witness the leader making difficult decisions consistently and sometimes without all the necessary information. Back then she wouldn't think so much about it. But after this mission, she now knew the weight that the leader had to shoulder for so many years. The journey to the Center Battle Administration area took only around half a day, and after they landed, Lucas and the other awakened teams were ushered into armored cars and proceeded to the leader's residence directly. When Lucas saw the familiar modest-looking home painted in the familiar shade of gray, common for most buildings in the Center Battle Administration area, he was eager to meet the leader. Lucas and his team members weren't too anxious as it wasn't the first time they had met the leader. Kevin's team was anxious and in awe when they saw the cozy interior with antiques all over the place. They had always imagined the leader's residence to be huge and lavish. Terry's team had only been able to see the leader's residence from afar. It was the first time for them to enter, and they were also equally surprised. The leader, who was sitting on the sofa reading a book, looked up and closed the book. He stood up, glanced across the living room at each and every one of the awakened. "Welcome. I've been waiting for the good news for a very long time. Thank you everyone for your contributions. What you did was a major pivot point in our war against the demonic beasts," the leader said and took a slight bow to the awakened. "You don't have to. We only did what was right. I think the success was due to Lucas. Yes, without Lucas, we would have perished under the apex demonic beast." Riley, Emma, Rex, and Harrianto began to emphasize the contributions made by Lucas. Terry and Kevin's team also nodded their heads. The leader, after hearing what they said, walked over to Lucas and patted him on his shoulder. Lucas's mind went blank the next moment. In the next moment, Lucas saw the familiar dark space again. A beam of light shone down in front of him. The leader appeared from within and said, "I've heard from Sherry what you've done on your own. Glad that I've made the right decision, putting my faith in you. And of course, my deal with you is still valid. It'll be a $10 million reward for you. I must say, though, I didn't expect you to become so much stronger." The leader then scanned Lucas from head to toe. "Like you said the first time we met, we all have secrets of our own." Lucas replied with a shrug and continued, "However, I do have some questions for you." The leader lowered his head and nodded slightly. "I'm all ears. Why was this apex demonic beast able to think and speak? And why would it want to fight together with us against something else? Lastly, it called my summoned beast Elder. Do you have any ideas about it?" Lucas asked all the questions he had in mind. The leader put his hands behind his back, closed his eyes, and pondered for a moment. Throughout the years of him fighting against the demonic beasts, he had never encountered demonic beasts reaching out, trying to negotiate. This was a first even for him. The leader looked up and let out a sigh. It's unheard of that an apex demonic beast could think and speak. And for it to be more intellectual, maybe that's why it wasn't as powerful as the other apex demonic beasts. One thing for sure is that they might be more varied than what we've previously thought. As for what it wanted us to fight against, I have no idea. It might be the apex demonic beast coming up with an excuse, or it might be the truth. And about your summoned beast, I have no idea either. Maybe the National Archives would have something for you there. You shall be granted access to it," the leader said and glanced at Lucas. Lucas frowned as he didn't expect the leader to be just as clueless as he was. The next moment, he was back in the living room again. "Well done, Lucas. And that's the same for every one of you," the leader said and glanced at the other awakened teams. Terry and Kevin's team stood up straight, being proud of the moment. The leader sat back onto the sofa again, and Sherry came out from the back, pushing a cart with glasses of red wine on it. "Come, let's have a toast for the success of the mission," Sherry said and handed out the glasses of red wine. Everyone took a glass of red wine and toasted to the mission's success. After he finished the red wine, the leader put down his wine glass and said, "However, it's not over yet. I will be sending troops to try and gain more territories now that the apex demonic beasts in the West and South Battle Administration areas are gone. Lucas, Riley, Rex, Emma and Harriento were delighted when they heard this. This would be the start where mankind turns the tide. Over the decades, mankind had been defeated and forced to give up much of the land to these demonic beasts. And as a result, resources dwindled, and life became harsh. It was especially so for the South Battle Administration area, with the least number of mines and arable land. Gaining back control of more land would allow their friends and families in the South Battle Administration area to have an easier life. In the meantime, the leader stopped, glanced at the awakened teams and said, "I need your help to get rid of the Shadow Lotus. I can't risk the operations being jeopardized by them. Go and investigate Lin Fan's connections with the Shadow Lotus in the East Battle Administration area. Find out where they are and eliminate them. The reward shall be the same, $5 million for the success of the mission." Terry and Kevin's team opened their eyes wide and relished the possibility of another $5 million on top of what they had gotten. Lucas glanced over at Riley and the others. They were also just as enthusiastic about the mission. After all, they'd encountered the Shadow Lotus so many times, and each time they got better against the Shadow Lotus. "You can count on us." It didn't take long for Terry, Kevin, and Riley to agree to the mission. The leader was glad, and he glanced over at Sherry. Sherry handed them each a folder with information she had gathered from Lin Fan's teammates. "Inside the folders is information that might help with your investigations," she said. The awakened teams were eager, and they started to flip through the documents inside. The leader saw this and waved at Sherry, gesturing it was time for them to go. Sherry then led them out of the leader's residence. When she came back into the living room, the leader let out a sigh and said, "I'm sorry I had to make you do it. I don't have much time left before my month-long sleep. I need someone capable enough while I'm gone. Hope it wasn't too difficult for you, making pragmatic choices." Sherry lowered her head and nodded. She understood what the leader was saying, and it was one of those pragmatic decisions the leader had to make. Now it would fall on her shoulders as the leader's sleep got longer, and his waking hours got shorter. "And I need you to make another difficult decision soon," the leader said. "Another mission?" Sherry wasn't sure what the leader meant. The leader stood up and walked over to the group photo hanging on the wall. He placed his hand onto the surface and pointed at one of the people in it. "I need you to wake Derek up." The leader glanced back with his finger pointing at the photo and said, "Derek?" Sherry asked. "Yes, Derek hibernating in the North Battle Administration area. But wouldn't it make Derek?" "No, Derek's ability allows him to stop even his aging. He was always running away from everything. But now I need him to show up," the leader replied. Sherry nodded as she knew the First Awakened had abilities that were much different. Their mastery level didn't stop at master. From what she heard from the leader, they were able to go beyond to transcendent level. And that wasn't the end of it. "What do you want from Derek?" Sherry asked. "Bring the demonic beast core, tissue and blood from the apex demonic beast to him. I need him to use his ability to help create the genotoxin and also figure out these questions." The leader then continued to brief Sherry on the questions that Lucas had. National Archives. Lucas didn't embark on the new mission straight away. He wanted to find out whether there was any information about Sheba and what the apex demonic beast had said. The guards were initially surprised that he had access to the National Archives. But when they saw the clearance Lucas had and who granted it, they quickly let him through. The leader must have his reasons, they thought. Lucas went through most of the books he thought were useful, like Encyclopedia of Demonic Beasts, Chronicles of the Awakening, and even Life Under the Old World. He read through them, trying to find any hint that was recorded inside. Time passed from the morning to the afternoon, and he couldn't find any clue. Frustrated, he glanced out of the window and rested his eyes on the distant trees. He saw a cuckoo bird's chick pushing out the eggs of its host. The cuckoo bird's chick, with its instinct for survival, tried its best to push as many eggs of its host as possible. It was an impressionable scene for anyone witnessing it for the first time. A thought then struck his mind when he saw this scene. The cuckoo bird's chick was like the demonic beasts, coming from another realm, trying to push out mankind from the planet. And the apex demonic beast might be afraid of other beings from where they come from. Lucas stood up and searched in another direction instead. He took out several books on cosmology. Initially, he found nothing unusual reading through these books. It was in a magazine that he found something interesting. There were interviews with a tour group that said they had gone into another realm, an alternate universe that was different. They mentioned scary beasts that roamed the lands instead of mankind. Many experts trashed what the tour group had said, calling it nonsense. But Lucas knew the tour group wasn't lying as he recognized the photo of the tour group. It was the same photo the leader had. And those interviewees were most likely the first awakened. Lucas had a hunch about what happened next. He quickly flipped through the next publication of the magazine. And he was right, as the tour group members were said to be hospitalized. Lucas tried to get to the end but couldn't find any more of the magazine. From the date and time, matching it with the Chronicles of the Awakening, he knew that disaster struck soon after, and demonic beasts started appearing. When he glanced out of the window again, it was already nighttime. The National Archives was about to close, and the guards stood at the entrance where he was, waiting to usher him out of the building. Lucas sighed and knew he had to leave. Even though he couldn't find his answers, he got to know more about the leader. Everyone had their own secrets indeed. When Lucas got back to the hotel, everyone was waiting for him in the dining hall. "It sure feels good to be young, eh?" Rex gave him a wink and said with an envious look. Emma rolled her eyes and slapped him on the back of his head. "Not everyone is like you, with only women on your mind. Hey, you know what? Now that I'm rich, I'm gonna call all my exes and let them beg for me to give them a chance." Rex took out his phone and protested to Emma. Now that they had gotten the $5 million reward, they were considered very well off in the South Battle Administration area. Emma couldn't believe what she heard and gave up. She glanced over at Lucas and asked, "Any findings?" Lucas shook his head and replied, "Nope, nothing out of the ordinary." He didn't want to alter their perception of the leader until he had gotten to the bottom of it. Riley interjected and said, "Then, I propose we make our move to the East Battle Administration area tomorrow." Harriento nodded and said, "I've made the necessary arrangements. We can move at any moment. If there's no objection to it, we shall move out tomorrow," Riley said, and everyone nodded. He then glanced over at Margaret. Margaret had been crucial to their success, healing them when they got hurt badly. Their agreement with Dr. Uva was for Margaret to help them complete the mission. And now it was time to try and get Margaret to join their team permanently. Riley wasn't sure what the relationship between Dr. Uva and Margaret was, but he felt there was still a chance that Margaret might join them. Everyone glanced over at Margaret. Margaret looked down, not sure of her decision. "If you have to, discuss it with the people important to you," Riley said. Margaret hesitated for a moment and typed a message to Dr. Uva. It didn't take long for Dr. Yui's reply to come. She picked up the phone and looked at the message. "You are young. Live your life the way you want. I've told you many times. I'm an old man with my life ending soon. Go forth and be happy." Margaret smiled as that was what Dr. Uva had told her all along. And he was right. She definitely felt alive when she was needed by Riley and the others. A feeling she didn't feel with Dr. Uva. After spending all these years trying to get him to be with her, maybe it was time for something else, she thought. Margaret then nodded and said, "I'll join the team.